The coward that shot these victims took his own life in the rear of the church. That coward has been identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman.
Imagine two little kids, just 8 and 10 years old, sitting in church for their very first back-to-school mass. And then in seconds, their lives are gone. But here's the real question. Why does the media refuse to call the shooter what he truly was? On August 27, 2025, Minneapolis, Minnesota, was shaken by one of the darkest tragedies the city has faced in recent memory. A former student of Annunciation Catholic School, Robin Westman, who was once known as Robert, chose this day to carry out an unthinkable act of violence. Annunciation Catholic School, which stands beside its church of the same name, was holding its traditional back-to-school mass, a gathering filled with children and families. As someone who once attended Catholic school myself, I know how joyful and innocent these opening ceremonies are meant to be. But for Westman, this setting became the target. Having once studied there, and with a mother who worked in the same institution, Westman was deeply familiar with both the school and its traditions. Before the attack, Westman posted a series of disturbing videos online, including a manifesto that foreshadowed the violence to come. The details of those recordings are still circulating on the internet, offering a chilling look into Westman's mindset. Then, on that late August morning, Westman opened fire through the stained glass windows of the church, shattering what should have been a day of unity and joy. When the violence ended, the toll was devastating. 2 children, just 8 and 10 years old, lost their lives, and 17 others suffered injuries. In the final moments of the attack, Westman turned the weapon on himself, ending his own life. In the aftermath, grief spread quickly through the community, but so did countless personal stories. Each person who heard or lived through the tragedy carried their own version of what it meant and how it felt.
Had different experiences.
This is a big publication in Minneapolis who says multiple people who live in the area reported hearing a lengthy burst of gunfire. Some people told the outlet that they heard so many shots fired off, they thought work was being done on nearby homes. And this outlet is also saying police are currently escorting parents and children to the school's basement. They've seen people crying, running towards the scene. So just, a tragedy that's currently unfolding here in Minneapolis. And this shooting appears to be the latest in a string of violent incidents in this city since Tuesday afternoon. Yesterday, another shooting killed 1 person and injured 6 others. And now, less than 24 hours later, we have this unfolding where parents are potentially waiting to hear some of the worst news of their lives.
At first, confusion spread through the neighborhood. The gunfire was so deafening that many people mistook it for construction work or heavy road repairs nearby. No one could have guessed that violence was unfolding inside a church. The shock was even sharper because just days earlier, Minneapolis had already endured another mass shooting, leaving the community on edge. When the truth emerged, fear gripped parents and families. Mothers and fathers rushed frantically, searching for their children, desperate for answers. The chaos of that search painted a heartbreaking picture of panic and helplessness. Meanwhile, federal investigators began piecing together new information, and by today, the FBI revealed more details about the attack and the person responsible.
But make no mistake about it, Sandra, evil did visit the school today, and as we suspected, it was from the outside. And one point that I heard early, and I would love to know if it was confirmed, that he chocked the doors from the outside. That's very telling, because it tells you that he had planned this in maybe different stages. Maybe he wanted to block the doors, throw that smoke bomb in, and unblock them and get them as they came out. You don't know, but this was very well planned by this person. He had every intent to cause as much carnage as he could. And the stained glass windows, may have caused most of those injuries.
In his own words, Westman once described himself as a Catholic, explaining that he chose to sit by the stained glass windows during Mass because of their deep spiritual meaning. Each window, as anyone familiar with Catholic churches knows, carries a sacred representation, whether of saints, the Virgin Mary, or moments from Scripture. For Westman, those windows held personal significance, which makes the violence carried out through them all the more disturbing. Yet, in all the commentary I heard, particularly on Fox News, there was one label that never surfaced when describing Westman: thug. Think about that. A man deliberately targeting children as young as 8 or 10, along with priests and teachers, fits the very definition of thuggish violence. Many have gone so far as to call him a coward and, perhaps he was, but to me, that word doesn't carry the same weight. Thug is sharper, more direct, and more accurate. But when the perpetrator is white, society tends to reach for other words. Both Democrats and Republicans condemned what happened. But not once did I hear him called what he truly was. This selective language stands in stark contrast to how black people are often described in similar or, even far less severe. Think back to the Cincinnati Music Festival in July, when a confrontation broke out after a white man instigated a fight with black attendees. Yes, there were wrongs on both sides. An innocent woman was struck, which should never have happened, but the larger point remains. The black individuals involved were reacting to aggression directed at them. And yet, once arrests were made, Vice President J.D. Vance had no hesitation in labeling those men with a term that was never applied to Westman.
I saw as a mob of lawless thugs beating up on an innocent person, and it's disgusting, and I hope every single one of those people who engage in violence is prosecuted to the full extent.
And Fox News didn't stop there. After Vice President J.D. Vance labeled the men at the Cincinnati Music Festival as thugs, other commentators quickly echoed the word, repeating it again and again. That repetition wasn't accidental. It revealed something far more troubling: how easily the label thug rolls off the tongue when the individuals in question are black, and how stubbornly that same word is avoided when the person committing violence is white. Language matters. The words media outlets choose don't just describe events, they shape the way the public interprets them. When you hear the word thug, it immediately conjures up images of criminality, menace, and danger. It doesn't leave room for sympathy, context, or humanity. The moment someone is called a thug, the audience is primed to see them as undeserving of compassion, and historically, that word has been applied overwhelmingly to black people. Even in situations where violence wasn't premeditated or where they were simply defending themselves. Contrast that with the way media outlets treat white perpetrators of mass violence. Instead of thug, the words we hear are loner, troubled, mentally ill, or lost soul. Sometimes we hear their backstories, failed marriages, financial struggles, childhood trauma. All of these details are offered up as if to explain, or even excuse, what they did. The very worst acts targeting children, murdering worshippers, carrying out planned massacres, still don't earn the label thug. That word is reserved, almost exclusively, for black people. This isn't coincidence. It's a deliberate, double standard. By softening the language around white criminals, the media implicitly protects their dignity, even in death. By hardening the language around black individuals, even when they're not criminals at all, the media strips away humanity and reinforces harmful stereotypes. The repetition of thug on Fox News wasn't just about one incident, it was part of a broader cultural script that conditions viewers to see blackness and criminality as intertwined. And this conditioning has consequences. It affects how juries see defendants, how police respond to situations, how the public reacts to protests or unrest. When a white man storms into a church with a gun, he's described as disturbed. When a black man throws a punch in a street fight, he's a thug. This uneven language helps justify uneven treatment. It explains why black children are more likely to be suspended in school for the same behavior as white classmates. It explains why black communities are overpoliced and why sympathy is scarce when tragedy strikes them. The frightening part is how normalized this has become. People watching Fox News may not even notice the discrepancy because it feels natural, almost invisible. That's how systemic racism often works. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through repetition, through choice of words, through what is emphasized and what is left unsaid. The word thug becomes a dog whistle. To some, it feels like a neutral term. But in practice, it functions as a coded slur, standing in for something far uglier that commentators know they can't say outright. So when J.D. Vance and others used the word repeatedly, it wasn't just commentary, it was reinforcement. It was signaling to the audience, these people are the criminals. They're the problem. They're not like us. And by refusing to apply the same word to Robin Westman, who committed a planned attack on children, the media drew a line in the sand. The label wasn't about the act of violence, it was about who committed it. Until society confronts this linguistic double standard, racism will continue to operate quietly, under the surface, shaping perceptions and justifying inequalities. The truth is simple: if a thug is someone who acts violently to commit a crime, then the term should apply universally. But it doesn't, and the fact that it doesn't reveals more about the people using the word. than about the people it's being used against.
Didn't stop there. Not only did JD Vance call them thugs, but we also heard other people say this.
This is animalistic. I mean, animals don't do this to each other. You know, it didn't stop there. They stomped all over both of those men, and then one of the thugs smashed a woman to the ground. She fell flat on the pavement, unconscious.
These two incidents, the Cincinnati Music Festival fight and the Minneapolis tragedy, show just how differently black and white people are labeled in America. At the festival, yes, things got out of hand. People made mistakes, and an innocent woman was struck. But it's important to note, no one was killed. The conflict was a reaction, a response in the moment, not a premeditated attack. None of the black men there plotted against children, teachers, or families. They didn't storm into a Catholic school. They didn't target defenseless worshippers at Mass. They were reacting to a confrontation that had already been started. Now, imagine this. If I start a fight, and I bring my mom or grandmother with me, and it escalates, yes, someone else might get hurt. That's not right, and I wouldn't defend it. But let's be honest, I caused it by dragging my family into a situation I created. Actions have consequences. And yet, in that kind of scenario, if I were black, the media wouldn't hesitate to call me a thug. But when it comes to Robin Westman, a white transgender person who openly posted a manifesto, who warned people of violence, who even wrote the chilling words "Pray for the children" before slaughtering innocents, what word did we not hear? Thug. That omission is no accident. Society saves that label almost exclusively for black people. A black man can simply defend himself in a fight, and the word thug gets stamped on him. Meanwhile, someone like Westman can carry out a calculated attack on children and teachers. And the media reaches for softer words: coward, troubled, mentally ill. Anything but thug. This is where racism reveals itself most clearly. Because when white individuals commit horrific crimes, networks both liberal and conservative find excuses. Times were hard. They were struggling. They just needed help. Excuses upon excuses, until the story feels softened. But the same courtesy is never extended to black people. The word thug becomes a stand-in for the N-word, a socially acceptable way to brand black people as dangerous, even when they're victims or acting in self-defense. I've listened to Fox News, to conservative commentators, even to black conservatives like Candace Owens, waiting for someone call Westman what they were, a thug, because by definition, that's exactly what it means, someone who acts violently, especially to commit a crime. But no one uses it. Why? Because thug isn't really about violence, it's a racial code word. It's for us, not for them. And, let's be real, this double standard cuts across both sides of the political aisle. I say this as a registered Republican myself, someone who shares many conservative values. I see how both Republicans and Democrats play the same game, just in different ways. Conservatives may be blunt, while liberals use policies and immigration agendas to quietly shift power. Either way, racism remains baked into the system. And if black people don't recognize how language is being used against us, we'll continue to be the ones paying the price. Make no mistake, this isn't accidental, it's deliberate. It took me a while to fully grasp just how deep the hatred runs, but it's real. And I'm not talking about asking for approval or begging for acceptance from people who've shown us, time and time again, how they truly feel. The truth is, many of them simply despise us, and when moments like this arise, when they have the chance to hold their own accountable, to use the same harsh language they throw at us, they refuse. Even with the worst offenders among their own, they draw a line. They will never degrade them the way they degrade us. They will never call them thugs. Think about that. Even their criminals are granted a level of respect that we as black people are constantly denied. That's why it's dangerous to mistake racists for friends, or to believe that we'll be treated equally under the same rules. History has already proven otherwise. Trust them only as far as you can throw them. That's the hard truth. So what do you think? This is Yosha Du Jackson, signing off with another episode of the Celebrity Junk. Thank you for your support, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell.